The Seven Secrets of Somewhere Lake by Sam Campbell. Chapter 17. Down in Heaven. Dinner now a most happy memory. Jenny and I walked out into the cool gloomy of early evening. We have known and loved the peace of this magic hour in many of nature's mansions, in the lake-studded forests of the north, high in the mountains of the west, in treeless plains and in measureless deserts. But it seemed to us at the moment that none of them could match the heavenly quiet that reigned at the bottom of Grand Canyon. I am reluctant to say it, I confessed to Jenny, but this is worth all the jolts, joggles, and contortions I went through to get here. We walked by the corral. There we could see Z-Bar towering above companion mules, their heads close together, apparently talking over events of the day. Z-Bar discovered us and pointed our way with his big ears, as if saying, "There he is now. Can you imagine carrying that down the North Rim? You fellas were lucky." We sauntered on down the Kebab Trail, which at this point follows the course of Bright Angel Creek to the Colorado River. Above us towered the walls through which the river had carried its way during countless ages. Faintly in the distance we could see the slender span which we knew to be the Kebab Bridge. Over this the Kebab Trail began its ascent of some 7 miles to the south rim. This bridge is a monument to human ingenuity and courage. Much of the material used in it was brought down by muleback, which makes these faithful, enduring animals heroes along with the men. The bridge is 440 feet long and is suspended 70 feet above the water. The Colorado is more than a mere waterway. It is the visible symbol of unlimited power and inexhaustible purpose. It is time in liquid form, a fluid sculptor chiseling images of the ages. True, the Colorado is not beautiful so far as its waters are concerned. The majestic cliffs, though, which it flows are colorful and impressive, but the river itself is brown-red with its ponderous load of silt. Its sand and gravel-laden waters are still carving deeper into the earth. Every 24 hours they carry at least 100,000 tons of debris past any point of their winding course. As we reached our cabin, we noted a circle of jolly visiting folks outside the dining lodge. The lodge manager and his wife, the cook, the waitress, several guides, including Pete, and a government ranger, were seated in a comfortable camp chair, enjoying the light, refreshing breeze that drifted down the canyon. "Come on, folks, here are some chairs," said the manager. "This is a nightly ceremony with us. The daytimes are pretty hot, and sitting out in the evening air is one of our greatest pleasures down here." We were introduced to those whom we had not previously met, and in a matter of minutes all were talking as freely as if we had known one another for years. Presently, I sensed something touching my shoulder and felt warm breath on the back of my neck. I turned my head slowly and looked right into the eyes of a beautiful antlered buck deer. "Do you all see what I see?" I asked. "Is this real or stuffed?" They laughed. "That is Mulligan, and he is very real, though I think he wants to be stuffed," said the cook. She was a charming lady, whom we learned to know simply as Mrs. Y. "He comes every night begging. Here is some whole wheat bread I have waiting for him. You feed him." Jenny was on her feet now, talking to our beautiful visitor. While we fed him, we learned Mulligan's story. He had been found in the forest when a fawn, and was then in very poor condition. This was over 3 years ago. A ranger brought the creature to the lodge, and Mrs. Y took him under her care. "You never saw a more heroic case of nursing in your life," commented the manager. Mrs. Y actually sat up nights with the fawn. The rest of us went on half rations until Mulligan was on his feet. "Oh, he's a darling," said Mrs. Y. "Mulligan, come here." Mulligan walked away from us and our offers of more food, and literally put his huge head in Mrs. Y's lap. He held perfectly still while she scrubbed back of his ears. "This is an old stunt of ours," said Mrs. Y. "Mulligan loves this, and so do I." There were other shadowy forms coming out of the night now. Presently there were 6 deer in our circle, wandering from one guest to another for bits of food and petting. There were a doe with 2 fawns, one larger doe, a spike-horn buck, and, of course, Mulligan, who continued to monopolize Mrs. Y. Jenny plucked at my sleeve. "What is that up in the tree looking down at us? It looks like the face of a raccoon." "Oh, it's Mugsy," said the ranger. "Mugsy, the ring-tailed cat. Come down here, Mugsy." And Mugsy did. "Oh, you beautiful creature," exclaimed Jenny, fascinated by the lovely, quick-moving ringtail. "Come over here to me, will you?" "No," said the manager. "He never comes to anyone except Mrs. Y, and not always to her. He runs all around us, but he won't let us touch him." Mugsy had made his way down the tree and across the ground to a pan of food which had been left for him. His movements were wonderfully graceful and swift. He climbed the tree with his ability of a squirrel. His long, slender body made him resemble a fox somewhat, though his tail and 7 black stripes ended the similarity. The ringtail is closely related to the raccoon. Mugsy was soon followed by members of his family. We now had 6 deer and 4 ringtails to watch. Jenny and I were having a marvelous time. "Why didn't someone tell me this was down here?" I asked. "I would have ridden Z-Bar down backwards to see this." Peter laughed heartily. "Z-Bar might have something to say about that," he suggested. Jenny plucked my sleeve again and pointed back into the darkness. By this time we were expecting almost anything to happen. Just at the limit of our vision, I could see a huge form moving towards us, so large it seemed a piece of the night itself had become animated. There was the sound of heavy hoofs. "Is something coming?" I asked Mrs. Y, "or am I seeing things?" She looked towards the approaching form and then laughed. "That's Howard," she said. "It is about time for him to come. He has been gone all day. Come on, Howard." Howard came on, getting more huge at every step. He proved to be a mule larger than Z-Bar, if that were possible. He was built something along the lines of a dirigible balloon. There were no questions as to his intentions. He walked unhesitatingly into the circle, pushing deer to one side and causing me to move quickly to keep from being trampled as he went directly to Mrs. Y. "You big baby, you," she said, petting the mammoth head that reached into her lap. "Here is some cake. I've been saving it for you. Where have you been, and what have you been doing?" "You might as well except Howard," commented the ranger. "He is as fixed in this canyon as the Colorado River." "From the corral?" I asked. "No, Howard wouldn't stay in a corral. He wouldn't stay in any place, go any place, or do anything he's supposed to." "A pack mule? Howard work?" said the ranger, raising his eyebrows. "Don't be silly. Howard has retired. It was his own decision. He used to be used on the trail, but he organized himself into a 1-mule union and went on strike. That was 2 years ago, and he hasn't done a lick of work since." Howard's story was a classic of animal decision. He wouldn't be harnessed, and he wouldn't be ridden. No amount of argument or even severe whippings would change his mind in the least. His decision came suddenly. For years, he was a most faithful animal, carrying on the hard work of the trail both as a saddle mule and a pack animal. But that was over. He was struck for no work at all and better food. He was getting it. "The other day I saw him down by the river," the ranger said. "Howard and I are right good friends, and I started to walk up to him, as I always do, to pet him. I was surprised when he tossed his head and backed away from me. I talked to him, then tried again to approach him, but he would have nothing to do with me. Then I realized what was wrong. I had my riding boots on, and he was looking right at them. He thought I was going to ride him, and he intended that it wasn't going to happen. Just to see if I was right, I went back to my cabin and put on another pair of shoes, lower, hiking shoes. When I came back, he walked right up to me. 'Mrs. Y, tell about the time he went into the kitchen.'" "Oh," Mrs. Y peered around her mammoth pet. "Well, that really wasn't Howard's fault. He was influenced by Mulligan. You see, Mulligan lived in the house at one time, and he feels special privilege. He comes to the door, and we still let him in occasionally. He had learned how to open the screen door on the kitchen himself. He would paw at it until it opened. Then in he would come. Well, Howard watched Mulligan do this stunt, and he saw that Mulligan was always rewarded by some good food when he got inside. Once Mulligan went in with no one around, and he ate a whole blueberry pie I had just baked. Howard decided he was as clever as Mulligan, and one evening he walked up to the door and pawed it. "You didn't know your own strength, did you, honey?" She said to the mule. "You just kicked the door off its hinges and walked in. It took all the king's men to get you out again, didn't it, pet?" Howard went about the circle, accepting a bit of petting and a bit of food from each one. He paused skeptically in front of me. "These aren't riding boots, Howard," I assured him. "Anyway, I've had enough mule riding to last me a long time. Don't you be afraid." He let me pat him, but he kept an eye on my field boots just the same. "Jenny," I said when we had returned to our cabin and were about to enjoy a wonderful, restful sleep, "I have large ears, haven't I?" She looked puzzled. "Well, I guess they are a little larger than the average. Why do you ask?" "And am I just a little bit stubborn? Sort of like a mule, am I not?" "A little. Now, what is all this?" "I am just trying to qualify myself." "For what, pray tell?" "For membership in Howard's Union. I'd like to stay here at the bottom of Grand Canyon the rest of my life, and that would be the only way I could do it."